welcome everyone to another Friday Q&A, a webinar series produced by the UF Thompson Earth Systems Institute, Scientists in Every Florida School program, and the Community Scholars Initiative. Each Friday at 3 p.m. for 30 minutes, a scientist will present on their area of expertise, followed by a question and answer session. Scientists in Every Florida School is a free program housed within the Thompson Earth Systems Institute at the University of Florida. The SEPS program connects and builds long-term partnerships between teachers and scientists in order to bring current scientific research and big data into the classrooms in Florida and beyond. The Community Scholars Initiative is based at Valencia College in Orlando, Florida. Our goal is to connect, create, and elevate educational experiences in the classroom and our community. Supported by the Lake Nona community, we facilitate programs in both Orange and Osceola County schools and work with community leaders and businesses to build out-of-school learning programs. During the COVID-19 school closures, we've been happy to partner with SEPS to continue engaging with our students, teachers, and parents in a digital platform. Today, we are joined by Sarah, who is originally from the UK and started out in the archaeology and history field, but 8 years ago saw a baby sloth video on YouTube and signed up to work at the Sloth Sanctuary. She worked on and off in Costa Rica for 3 years, where she met Dr. Cliffe at the Sloth Sanctuary. Sarah eventually quit her job back in the UK and moved to Costa Rica to work with Dr. Cliffe as her research assistant. They worked together completing many sloth research projects, including wild sloth behavior, genetic studies, metabolic studies, and fecal studies. Yes, really, she even studies poo. As well as many others working under Dr. Cliffe's mentorship. After completing the research, they wanted to continue working with the sloths, so Dr. Cliffe enlisted Sarah to help start the Sloth Conservation Foundation 5 years ago. As Sarah tells you about her work, please add your questions into the chat and one of our moderators will ask her questions. And without further ado, I will pass it off to Sarah Kennedy. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm really excited to tell you about sloth. I hope that everyone listening knows what a sloth is. If you don't, we're going to find out, so that's totally okay. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll get started. So very basically, a sloth is a mammal that lives in Central and South America. So you're not going to find them anywhere outside of this area. And they actually live from a country called Honduras all the way down to Brazil. So it's actually a really big area. Now, there are two main types of sloth. So you may have heard that they are called the two-toed and the three-toed sloth, but it's wrong because every single sloth actually has 3 toes, but they have different fingers. So we call them the three-fingered and the two-fingered sloth. So there is a little bit of a difference. And they were actually separated over 30 million years ago. So they've ended up with similar lifestyles, but they are very, very different animals. In fact, if you kind of compare it to humans, we're more closely related to things like chimpanzees and orangutans, but we are more closely related to baboons than sloths are to each other. So they are very, very different animals. And I'll show you the two types if we want to go to the next slide. So this is the two-fingered, my personal favorite because of their little piggy nose. So they're very like blonde color, even up to white blonde to dark black brown. And they have the 2 fingers, the piggy nose. And I love this photo. Look at that little baby. So cute. All right, over to the next slide and we'll show you the three-fingered. So really different, even just on the looks, right? Because these guys have got more of like a little button nose and they've got that raccoon mask and they're kind of more of like a grayish brown. And of course they have the 3 fingers. That's just a couple of little differences for you, but they are very different animals. They really shouldn't be classed as the same species, but they've been kind of lumped in together. All right, if we want to go to the next slide. So there are 6 species of sloths in the Americas. So if you can see the one on the left, it says the Hoffman's two-fingered sloth, and then you've got one kind of in the middle in the yellow, the brown-throated sloth. These are the 2 sloths that you can find here in Costa Rica. Now, the country underneath us, Panama, they have 3 types of sloths, and it includes the pygmy sloth, in the really cute little baby that you've got in the kind of pink color. Now, this sloth is actually really special because they only live on one island in the entire world. So the island is called Isla Escudo, and it's in the middle of the ocean off the coast of Panama. And these little sloths are about 40% smaller than a regular like regular brown-throated sloth. They only exist there in the mangroves, and they're one of the most endangered mammals in the whole world. We're not really sure what their population size is, but it's pretty low. And you can see them swimming from area to area, and it's amazing. Sloths are actually really, really good swimmers. They can swim 3 times faster in the water than they can move on land. And because of their big tummy, which is full of leaves fermenting, it's a little bit gassy, so they float. And then the three-fingered sloth, they also have 2 more vertebrae in their neck than we do. So they've got 9 vertebrae, we have 7, and it means they can stick their head really far out of the water, and they're just kind of doing like a sloth paddle. It's amazing. All right, let's go on to the next slide. So this is kind of a little bit more about where sloth came from and who they're related to. So this animal is called the Megatherium, or the giant ground sloth, and they're not with us anymore. They died out about 10,000 years ago, but they've been around from about 64 million years ago to only around 10,000. There was about 80 different species, but the biggest one was over 6 meters tall. It was absolutely massive. And one of my favorite facts that's in relation to sloth is because I really love avocados, and I hope all of you guys do too. But you can thank the giant ground sloth for avocados, because they were one of the few animals that could eat the entire thing, and they pooed the seed all throughout Central and South America. So when you next eat guacamole, maybe don't think of the giant ground sloth pooing, but you can thank it for your guac and chip. All right, head over to the next slide. So these are some of the relatives of sloth. Now, a lot of people think that sloths are actually a monkey, they are a bear, but they're actually related to anteaters and, very weirdly, armadillos. Now, they're part of a special grouping. They actually have their own category, which is called the Xenothrans. And you've probably never heard of the word Xenothra before, which is fair enough. But it means that they have additional vertebrae. So all of these animals have special vertebrae that no other animal has. So they are related to the adorable anteaters, more closely related as well. And if we go on to the next slide, you can see some of their other ancestors. So, sorry, some of their other relatives. So this is the armadillo, and I think a lot of you are tuning in from Florida. I think you guys have armadillos there, I'm not sure. But yeah, I still don't really get the armadillo one, because they do look a little bit weird, don't they, compared to a sloth. But there you go, sloth, anteaters, and armadillos, all Xenothrans and all related to each other. So if we want to go to the next slide, there you go, just so you can see the family there. So you've got 4 species of anteater, 20 species of armadillo, and 6 species of sloth, and that's the family grouping right there. If we want to head to the next slide. So this is one of my favorite things to talk about, because there are a lot of myths about sloths online. And a lot of people believe these facts that have been put up online, but they're not actually true. So one of the biggest myths about sloths is that they are lazy. And I'm sorry, they're not. They are actually stealthy. So sloths, basically, we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but they're all about conserving their energy. So instead of wasting energy rushing around, they're actually just chilled out, and they don't even sleep that much, which I'm going to talk about just here as well. People do sleep, I think they sleep for about 20 hours a day. It's about an average of 10, actually. So maybe just a little bit more than we sleep, which you couldn't really call lazy. That's not lazy at all. Koalas, however, who have a similar lifestyle to sloth, they can clock up 20 hours of sleep a day. And there you go, koala. We'll call koalas lazy rather than sloth. Now, we've already talked about that they're not monkeys or bears. One of my favorite myths is that people think sloths are slow because they're drunk. And this is what people think about for koalas as well, because both of these animals eat leaves, and there are a lot of toxins in those leaves. So if the toxicity builds up, it could cause kind of like a drunkenness. But it doesn't happen in either koalas or sloths, because their digestion and their leaf rotation for sloths in particular helps them not have this issue. And this might be my #1 favorite myth. I get asked this question a lot. Do sloths mistake their arms for tree branches? No. I don't know where this came from, but no, they're not that stupid. They do fall out of the trees quite frequently. It's about once a week, roughly, but it's normally because the branches are broken, or potentially two males are fighting over a female, and the one that loses is the one that falls out of the tree. But no, they're not climbing along the branch and like, oh no, and then fall out of the tree. That doesn't happen. All right, on to the next slide. So I said we were going to talk about this later, why sloths have so little energy. So it is largely because of their diet. So we've kind of said that like koalas, they eat leaves. This is not the most nutritional diet. Think of it this way. If you were only allowed to eat lettuce all day, every day, you're not going to have a lot of energy. You're going to be pretty sluggish like a sloth, right? But then it also, their stomachs are always full. It takes so long for them to digest their food. It's around 30 days for a single leaf. So they can only really eat little and often. Because a lot of animals that eat leaves, like a howler monkey, they eat a lot of food throughout the day and they process it very quickly. Whereas sloths eat little and often, and it takes a long time to digest. And this is why they only poo once a week. Yep, once a week. And what they'll do is, it's one of the weirdest behaviors ever. They'll come all the way down the tree, and then they'll hold on to the tree at the base, and they do the cutest thing ever. They wiggle their bums like this, like we call it the poo dance, and they dig a little hole with their bums, and then they poo and wee in the hole. They can lose up to a third of their body weight at a single time during that poo. And it's the happiest animal you've ever seen, because once they're doing the poo, they're holding on like this. They tip their heads back and they're just like, and they sit like that for about 5 minutes. It's amazing. It's honestly, if you can ever watch it, one of the greatest things you'll ever see. So there you go, sloths do once a week, and they do a poo dance when they do it as well. All right, on to the next slide. So we've talked about the reasons why sloths are slow, but there is actually a particular reason why they have this speed, because it's to hide from their predators. So sloths are all about hiding. They're all about camouflage. And if you think about it this way, they have survived for millions of years doing this. So actually, as I said, their slowness is being stealthy. Their predators, we're going to talk about the big cats in a minute, but the harpy eagle is one of their main predators. And both birds of prey and jungle cats, they hunt visually. So if you think of it this way, say you've got a harpy eagle in the tree and they're looking for food. There's a monkey running past. They can register that so quickly, but then you have a sloth under the branch, and when they're moving, they're kind of moving like this. They're moving very slowly. They're swaying like a tree branch. They're also very well camouflaged in terms of their fur coloring in the tree. And I don't know if you know this, but sloths grow algae in their fur. So over this head, neck, and shoulder area, their hair is specially designed. If you look at it under a microscope, it's got lots of like grooves in the hair follicle, and it helps intake water, and it helps facilitate the growth of about 70 to 80 different types of fungus, which turns them green, and it camouflages them like a tree. So this is another myth. A lot of people think sloths grow algae because they're really slow, but they actually grow it on purpose to hide from their predators. And the coolest thing ever, this algae, they think there's a possibility it can cure cancer. So sloths might be able to cure cancer with the algae that grows in their fur. So if we want to go over to the next slide, that's the harpy eagle, and we'll see one more sloth predator. This is the other big sloth predator. So harpy eagles and jaguars and pumas as well are big predators for sloths. A lot of these animals aren't doing very well in the wild, particularly the harpy eagle is nearly extinct. So it's not really predators that sloths have a problem with. It's actually us. We are their biggest predator. If we go over to the next page. And this is where we were going to talk about this. So pretty much every problem that sloths have in the wild are human related. So deforestation is a big one, not just for sloths, but any animal that lives in a jungle or a forest. If you think of it this way, imagine, so the sloths live in a tree, that's their home. And then someone wants to build something there, and they've come down and they've just cut down all the trees. the sloth lost its home. It's the equivalent of someone coming to your house and bulldozing your house. So it is a huge problem for sloths and lots of other animals as well. You've seen it with orangutans in Borneo and loads of other animals. So that is a big problem that we're causing. And then, of course, we want to get around. So we build roads. And then that cuts through the sloth areas, and they are forced to come down to the ground and literally cross the road. So if you come and visit Costa Rica, hopefully you'll come and say hello once coronavirus is over. You will literally see sloths crossing the road because they're forced to get across to climb up to their next tree. Just the other day, our team were driving back in a storm and a car swerved in front of them, and there was a huge sloth in the middle of the road in the night in a storm. So they obviously rescued it and put it on a nearby tree, but it is a big problem here and in other countries where sloths are too. The biggest issue that sloths probably have is power lines. So we obviously need electricity, so we put up lots of cables, but the issue is they're not often insulated properly. So the animals are having to use the lines to get around, and they touch those bare patches on the lines and they get shocked or electrocuted. It's actually the #1 reason that we generally receive animals in rescue centers in Costa Rica, and it's also one of the biggest causes of death because unfortunately, if they have been electrocuted, it's normally quite severe. It's also why we get a lot of orphaned babies in rescue centers because the mum is the one touching the line. So luckily her baby survives, but the mum doesn't, sadly. Then this photo here is a dog with a sloth. Sorry guys. It is a big problem because there are a lot of stray dogs in a lot of countries. People don't spay and neuter the animals either, so it creates a lot of street puppies, which then are obviously strays on the street as well. And dogs don't really like sloths. They move very awkwardly, and so they attack them. They won't usually eat them, but they'll attack them and kill them. And that's obviously an ownership issue because a lot of the dogs here, they're just kind of running around wherever they want to. Now I'm going to talk about the selfies and the pet trade on the next slide. So if we want to go over to the next one. So this is actually kind of a thing that people don't really think about. Sloths it's kind of a twofold thing. So in a lot of countries in Central and South America, the sloths are taken from the wild. So they chop them out of their trees and steal the babies. They usually will kill the mum in the process to do this so that they can sell the baby sloth for pictures with tourists. Now, they don't look after these animals very well because sloths are very particular anyway, and it's incredibly stressful for sloths to be held by people. More so wild ones, but also hand-raised ones. Now, these animals will probably die within about 3 to 6 months, the ones that have been taken from the wild, and then they just go and get another one from a tree. So it's a really, really bad process. Now, there is a problem as well with this in zoos. There are a lot of zoos that do kind of hands-on sloth experiences. They will tell you that it's fine because the sloth has been hand-raised. And while it will be less stressful for them, it is still stressful. You have to remember that firstly, they're taking the sloth out of their exhibition area. They're also being handled by lots and lots of different people. So that's really stressful for them. They are solitary animals and they don't like being touched or petted, which is honestly one of the saddest part of my job because let's face it, sloths look super cuddly, right? But no, they really hate being touched. So if you ever go to a zoo that offers sloth selfies and holding them, please, please, please say no for the welfare of the sloth, and they'll be very happy as well. All right, if you want to head to the next slide. So this is a little bit about what we do. So the Sloth Conservation Foundation. So we do some scientific research. We kind of mentioned it a minute ago about some of the studies that we do, like the poo studies. Yes, I actually had to blend sloth poo in a blender, by the way, which was not one of my finest days. We do metabolic studies. Right now, we're going to be starting a new research project on wild sloth versus hand-raised sloth behavior. We do sloth tracking in the wild to look at sloth behavior. And we've recently teamed up with an amazing rescue center in Costa Rica called the Jaguar Rescue Center, where they've hand-raised these beautiful orphan baby sloths and released them in the wild, and we are tracking them to make sure that they're doing okay. So that's a really awesome project that we're doing. As I said, if you come down to Costa Rica, you can come and check them out in Cahuita National Park and the Rescue Center as well. We also do a lot of reforestation, so lots and lots and lots of planting trees, basically, which is very simply. We also, this is really special to me, we do a spay and neutering project. So I mentioned that a lot of the dogs here, they're not neutered or spayed, so it's creating more of an issue with the street puppies. So we actually help pay for this every single month for a certain amount of dogs to be spayed and neutered. We also build sloth crossings. So you can see that little sloth on the bridge over there. We put these up where there are big gaps in the forest, and it means the sloth might have to come down to cross the road, or maybe come down or go onto the power cables. So the idea is we put them in an area that they're crossing, and they cross over the bridge rather than having to put themselves in danger. We've kind of talked about the sloth selfie thing. So we do actually a lot on responsible tourism as well. We're going to be, we do this a lot with kind of like how to interact with sloths if you see them in the wild, like don't use your flash, give them at least 2 meters of space, no touching and things like that, because that's really important. And we do have a lot of tourists that come into this area and see sloths like on the road. So it's really important that they know how not to interact with the sloth, basically. And then this is kind of what we're doing right now. So one of the things that I do is I go to a lot of schools in the local area, and we do sloth and wildlife lessons. A little bit like this, but obviously face to face, which is always nicer, a little bit nicer. We do the lessons in both English and Spanish. We try and also do teaching in the indigenous reservations, and the kids there are incredible. They're so on the ball with nature. It's amazing, really. So that's a couple of little things that we do. If we want to go over to the next slide. And these are things that you guys can do, and it's really, really easy. So this is what you can do just every day to help the environment and help animals. So take shorter showers. Can you take a train rather than a plane? Or do you have a bike that you could use for a short journey rather than using a car? Not using plastic bottles, so having a reusable aluminum bottle. Not an obvious one is not throwing trash on the street. Use the bins, or sorry, trash. English and American words. Now you can also separate your recycling. This one you might think is a bit weird. How does me eating less meat help sloth? Now, the reason it helps is because a lot of animals that we eat, they graze in the Amazon. So what they do is they cut down the trees in the rainforest to provide land for the animals. But what they also do is they have to grow their food as well. So they cut down a lot of the rainforest for meat production. So even if you eat just a little bit less meat every week, you're actually helping to save sloth. Cool, huh? We've talked about this, not taking part in the selfie trade. And then this one's a really nice one, inspiring a friend to join. So telling someone how cool you think sloths are and ways to help them is really, really helpful, just sharing information. And then if we want to go to the next slide, and I think it's the end of the little introduction to sloth. Yes, it is. So I think we've got our Q&A now. I hope you liked that little introduction. There is obviously a lot more that I could tell you about sloth, but we're limited on time. So I wanted to be able to give you a little bit of an overview. I hope you enjoyed it, guys.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your sloth wisdom with us. Our first question today is going to come from Charles, who asks,
hi, Charles.
Are you seeing any progress in terms of legislation when it comes to sloth protection?
So we're actually really fortunate being in Costa Rica because they already have really great legislation for animals here already. We would like to have more progress in terms of helping to insulate the power lines and things like that. But we are all working together with the electricity companies and things like that to kind of get that moving forward. But yeah, honestly, Costa Rica is actually pretty good for animal legislation already, especially if you compare it to other Latin American countries.
Our next question comes from Bruce, who asks, do sloths ever eat fruits or insects?
They are foliivores, so they eat leaves basically. But the two-fingered sloth does have a more varied diet. So they will. I would assume that if they're eating leaves, they would probably get an ant or two, but they're not going to sort of seek them out. They do have a more varied diet, including in terms of which trees they eat from. But yes, they eat mostly leaves, not insects.
Colleen is curious, can you report zoos for sloth handling?
The issue is it's not illegal. I mean, obviously you could report them if you thought that the sloth was sick or the habitat it was in wasn't good. But unfortunately, it isn't illegal, so it's a bit difficult with that one.
Our next question comes from Chelsea, who asks, how many sloths are currently in Costa Rica or even in the world in general?
We don't know. So the problem with this is that no one has ever done a full population study on sloths, partly because it's very difficult. So normally sloths are about 40 meters up in a tree, hiding in the foliage. So to actually find them and realize how many there are there, it's very, very difficult. They think that most sloths have a healthy population currently. So, for example, the two that live here, the Coloepus hoffmanni, the Twofingered, and the Bradypus variegatus, which is the Threefingered, they are least concerned on that kind of scale. But if you look at how many sloths are coming into rescue centers, so in this area, there are two main rescue centers that look after sloths, and they get probably about 500 a year between them. And that's just two rescue centers in one single area of Costa Rica. They're very difficult to look after because they get so stressed being around humans. And if they're injured and stressed, that's even more stressful. Stress is a really big killer in wild animals. So you're going to lose a lot of them, particularly as sloths are the #1 animal that get electrocuted. So if you think of it that way, you're getting a lot of sloths into rescue centers. A lot of them aren't making it. There's no way that population is going to stay healthy, particularly if you keep developing areas. So no, it's a bit of a tough one that we can't really say the full population on sloth, but they're not doing very well basically at the moment, which is really sad.
Our next question comes from Emma, who asks, how long do sloths live for in captivity and in the wild?
So another fun question, because we also don't know. So sloths, the only really decent science has been done in the last 10 years. So we're still learning a lot about sloths. And the reason we don't know how long they live for is because they're still alive. So the oldest sloth in the world is in a zoo in Bonn in Germany. Her name's Paula. And I think she just turned 50 this year. So they could live till 70, 80. They could even live to 100 because animals that have slow metabolisms do tend to live longer lives. So it might even be, there might be some 100-year-old sloths in the jungle right now. And the Threefingered, they don't do very well in captivity. So this one's a little bit harder to guess. The oldest sloth that was in captivity was Buttercup at the Sloth Sanctuary, who sadly passed away. And she was 27, I think. So we think that they can live similar lives in the wild. But yeah, I'll let you know in 40 years. I'll send you an email.
Okay, we have time for just a few more questions.
Okay.
Our next one is from Barry, who asks, what do sloths use as a form of defense?
Their defense mechanism is technically to hide. So that's their camouflage ability. Their other defenses aren't that great. The two-fingered sloth, they will puff up their hair, kind of like a cat does, to make themselves look bigger. And they will kind of swipe you. And they're really, really strong. So they will swipe, and if they get you, good luck getting out of that grip, because their grip is stronger than anything. But they can't really do much past that. They can bite. So if a harpy eagle manages to grab onto them, sometimes they are able to stay on the branches because their grip is so good and the eagle gives up. There's actually a video online you can watch that happening. But their biggest defense is camouflage, hands down.
Jenny is curious, how long do baby sloths stay with their mothers?
It is honestly different for each individual, but it's up to about a year with their mum, and they stay on her chest about 6 to 8 months. They start becoming a lot more adventurous around 6 months, and basically they start to kind of slowly go away from each other, and the baby will become independent around a year, and then the mum will move out of her home range to give the baby space. But it's about up to a year. But yeah, every sloth is different, just like us.
All right, and our last question for today is from Stephanie, who asks, Why do you think that sloths were larger and then got smaller over time?
They did what a lot of animals did. So they started off really big and then they went smaller and smaller and up into the canopy where it was much safer. So that's usually the reason why. But yeah, they, like a lot of animals, they kind of started off absolutely massive and then got smaller and smaller to kind of hide away.
All right, Sarah, if it's okay with you, we were wondering if we will be able to see a sloth today.
See Lindsay Slohan. Hold on. Let me see where she is. All right, I'm going to turn the video off for a second and see if I can go find her. Give me 2 seconds. All right. Fingers crossed, everyone. We have a sloth here, which we've nicknamed Lindsay Slohan. So parents who know Lindsay Lohan, you might remember that. Because she's a bit of a party girl, because she parties all night and then she sleeps in the day. Let me have a little look. All right. She might be visible from my ladder, which I put up earlier. Oh. All right, let's have a little look. All right, I can sort of see her. We might only be able to see sloth bum, but I will go up the ladder and have a look. Hold on. Can you see her?
Yes, we can see her. She does blend in camouflage with that tree well, and with very little movement, you can barely tell she's there.
There you go. Everyone meet Lindsay.
Can everybody see Lindsay Slohan in the tree? That's awesome. Oh, that's great, Sarah. Thank you so much. That's the highlight of my week here.
Oh. There we go. I'm here. I'm back.
Well, thank you very, very much. You missed that conclusion. I was wrapping things up with the audience here, and we want to thank you from Costa Rica once again for being with us and sharing all of your wonderful sloth knowledge with us today. We really appreciate it.
No, you're so sweet. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. I hope everyone else did as well.
We definitely did. You have a great weekend. Everybody have a great weekend and take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.